You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise.
Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like
the moons and the suns with certain trees, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken,
bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries?
Does my hardiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines, digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words.
You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise.
Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling
I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts of my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise.
I rise.
I rise.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's, as always, a pleasure to be with you. As I was listening to the violinist and then the women of the ABA staff with Maya Angelou's great rendition, and then I see the ladies on the panel, I realize I'm the thorn surrounded by roses, so I'm the one male you get to tolerate today. It is a pleasure to greet you for our celebration of Black History Month and also Martin Luther King in particular. Last month, as many of you realize, we had scheduled our annual celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. King, and DC had a snow day that day. So we had to defer, but that gave us an opportunity to come up with this program, which I'm very excited about. We've got a great panel of ladies to discuss today's topic. I would like to begin, though, by referring back to January 21st, which was a Monday, and that was the day that the ABA offices were closed, both here and in Chicago, to celebrate the life of Dr. King. Yesterday we were also off, and that was because of President's Day. So we have a day that we celebrate all of the presidents of the United States, and we have one day that we celebrate one man's life and legacy, and that's the day to honor Dr. King. He's the only person who has a day dedicated to his life and legacy in particular. Again, as yesterday, the presidents all were bundled together for one day. It's hard to believe it's been 51 years since Dr. King was slain. He was only 39 years old at the time. January 15th of this year would have been his 90th birthday. We all know people who live to the age of 90 and beyond and still contribute and still are vital. So think of all the things we missed with Dr. King, but as he observed, the quality, not the longevity of one's life is what's important. The various messages from Dr. King are as relevant today and as important today as they were in the earlier days of the civil rights struggle. All you have to do is turn on the news or look online and you'll see stories that tell you that the dream is not yet realized. The problems that we face sometimes make us think that progress has been at a standstill. And in some ways, maybe we even have moved backwards. That's why it's important for every American not only to remember, but to live by Dr. King's legacy and his messages of hope and equality. As in recent years, Dr. King's birthday was celebrated this year as a National Day of Service, which is a very appropriate way to remember Dr. King, his life and his teaching, bringing people together, breaking down barriers, responding to community needs through citizen actions. His vision, dedication, and sacrifices for a fair and just society are as relevant and as important today as they have ever been. The theme for this year's program, as you all realize, is Women Fulfilling the Dream. It's an especially topical consideration, and especially so for those of us in Washington, D.C., because of the strides that women have made in recent years. Look no further than the 2018 federal elections. A record number, 102 women now serve in the House of Representatives. That's almost 1 in 4 members of Congress are now women. 23.4% of the House of Representatives are now female. Of the people who are running for president, at least 5 women are now running, and they have active chances of being the party's nominee. They're running for president in 2020. And that's a record number that 5 women would be credible candidates, including 2 women of color. At this time, I'd like to give a special thanks to our DC staff for the work they've done to make this event possible. First of all, Teresa Melton from Media Relations, Dan Andresen from DC Operations, Pedro Windsor, who's the Managing Director of the ABA Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And I'd like for all of the members of the DC Staff Diversity Council who helped coordinate the program, if you would please stand and be recognized. Thank you all. We are going to have a reception following today's event, so I invite you all to stay behind and to mingle with the panelists. We're delighted to have a very esteemed group of panelists led by Paulette Brown, who's a former president of the American Bar Association, also a former president of the National Bar Association. She regularly provides teaching and instruction on diversity and inclusion, implicit bias training. When she was president, the Board of Governors had a real focus in these areas, and she showed her tremendous skills in this area to help people who thought they understood really understand some things much more effectively. We've given this a real emphasis on the staff side. She also provides training to companies, law firms, and industry organizations. In 2014, the Rutgers Law Camden Black Law Students Association honored her for exemplifying the values advocated by Dr. King. Paulette, we're honored you could host us today. Our other panel members are Dorcas Adekunle, the Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director for Representative Susan Wild of Pennsylvania's 7th District. Charmaine Davis, Senior Vice President at Marsh USA. As she said, she had a really hard commute coming down a few flights to be with us today, but we appreciate that. Charmaine is a Senior Vice President at Marsh USA and a former President of the National Council of Negro Women, the DC chapter. And to my immediate right is Riche Holmes Grant, an attorney and lifestyle expert and the content creator of the Riche Life web series. So it's a sincere pleasure to welcome each of you to our celebration today. Paulette.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Teresa, for inviting me. It is really a real privilege to be here back in the DC office, and it is a special privilege to be here with this esteemed panel, Riche Holmes Grant, Dorcas, who I know since she was a law student, and Charmaine Davis Gurley. You know, we originally started this as an MLK celebration, and now we've moved to Black History Month, and in a couple of weeks it'll be Women's History Month. So I think we should just all wrap this up together and call it a trifecta and celebrate all three. We've got this incredibly dynamic panel here, and I'm going to ask them to just give a brief overview of kind of what they do, and then we're going to try and have a conversation, and hopefully you all can become a part of the conversation too. But before we started, since it was officially started as MLK Day, and since we have all women on the panel, I think that it's important for us to remember all of the women who were an integral part of Martin Luther King's life and his legacy, and I dare say that he would not have been able to do many of the things but for the women, because as we know, women, I won't go there. I won't make this like a women's political thing, but you all understand how it is, how women can get things done. And so, you know, we think about his incredible wife, Coretta Scott King, and then Barbara Reynolds. Carol, you should know she's a journalist who, yes, absolutely, I know you know who she is. Dorothy Cotton and Joanne Robinson. I don't know if you all know her. She was a professor, but she was the actual architect of the Montgomery bus boycott. And then Ella Baker from the NAACP, and Rosa Parks, and then before Rosa Parks, Claudette Colvin. So, you know, we want to think about those women in the context of Martin Luther King Jr. as we proceed with our panel and proceed with these really phenomenal women. I am real humbled to be sitting amongst all of you this afternoon. And so, because you've done so much in your careers and you've done so much to help others. And, you know, it's about a day of service. And really not just a day of service, but just ongoing service. And so you exude that in everything that you do. So Riche, can we start with you and just give an overview and, you know, tell them about how you couldn't get a job even after you went to Columbia Law School and Brown University?
Well, I would say that I opted not to actually get a job, but I created my own job. I started at SAT test prep, tutoring and admissions consulting company shortly after I graduated from law school, after I took the bar and then came back home, and I actually taught SAT prep for a company, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And people thought I was a little bit crazy because at that point I passed the bar, and they were like, really, you're going to do this? And I really wanted to give back to my community. I started the company in my hometown, and my goal was to do it for 5 years, to really make an impact there. And we're now in year 17, I think. So that is, thank you. So that was my first job out of law school. And then while on maternity leave, I had the bright idea to start another business. Out of necessity, I started designing baby and mommy accessories in my basement while my daughter was sleeping. And again, that was just really out of necessity. And then a light bulb went off, and I said, you know, maybe people might buy this stuff. And it turns out they did. And within a year of launching, we landed a partnership with Martha Stewart, who actually handpicked our company to partner with her in her American-made market. And that was the validation I needed to say, okay, I think I can do this. So for the past almost 6 years, I've been doing both. And most recently, I launched a lifestyle web series because I'm also a blogger. I blog about all things mom life, entrepreneurship, living your richest life. So my show is called The Rich Life, and the goal is to help other women live their richest lives too. I would say that the common thread in everything that I've done is that I followed my dreams. I've made choices that feel good to me. And at the end of the day, I'm still barred in New York and Maryland, but I jokingly say I only do the fun stuff. So for me, that just means very little, but I'm happy doing what I do.
That's great. So it's not often when people are actually brave enough to do what you've done and choices that feel good to you. So I think that that's something that we can learn. I'm still trying to get to it after many decades of trying that, but good for you, really fulfilling your dream. A classic example. Thank you. So Charmaine.
Certainly.
Yes.
So again, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. I am the Senior Vice President at Marsh, as we said, just a couple of floors up above us. And currently I'm a consultant for risk management and insurance environment. I also am the immediate past president of the National Council of Negro Women here in the Washington, D.C. area. And just starting with Marsh, I was raised here in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. by a middle-class family. And for me personally, I didn't realize that I was different than anyone else. I grew up in a diverse environment, and all of my friends probably looked like everybody in this room. It wasn't until I entered the work world where things changed, where I realized that I was going to be measured for other than my skills, for my experience, for my talent. And then I became heavily involved with a lot of the programs and groups internally at the Marsh organization, and it became part of my mission to not just help myself but others. One, because I really do subscribe to the industry that we're in. It's similar to the financial industry, and it's like if we go away, there probably will be no workforce here because it is integral to our economy. And I wanted to be able to share that with others because of what it has done for me and my family. After serving in a number of roles in that capacity, I also served as the chair of the National African American Insurance Association with a similar mission to empower African Americans in the industry, and realized I had spent a lot of my life really contributing to the workforce. What about the community where I was raised, where I live here in Washington, D.C.? And after many years of my aunties, who actually helped establish the now 75-year-old chapter, they encouraged me to come in and continue the legacy, which I've been doing for the last several years. And it's important for me, again, from a community perspective, to make sure that we empower women, which is why I really appreciate the title today. As you had mentioned, Martin Luther King, he didn't do this by himself. He had women behind him. And for those of you who are familiar with the NCNW, Dorothy Height was one of those persons who stood by him. And it was a pleasure, to know that she was probably one of the founding persons for all of us, at least being here today. Women made a lot of investments. We think of the Mary McLeod Bethune, who also, she found a problem, she fixed it. She didn't wait for anyone to create a solution. If there was an exclusion for students in an educational environment, she established her own college. If there was a lack of health care, she created her own hospital. So she was an original pioneer for women, and I'm glad to be a part of helping and having this conversation and being part of the dream for our future.
Great. Thank you so much, Charmaine. So, I have like a special affinity to Dorothy Height. In addition to all that she's done, she's also a past national president of Delta Sigma Theta too. Yeah. So but just her boldness and her vision about things were just incredible. And like you mentioned, Mary McLeod Bethune, no colleges for people to go to. Let's just create a college, Bethune-Cookman College. So there's so many things that women have done knowingly and sometimes not so much knowingly, to fulfill the dream of Dr. King. So, we always have to have someone here who represents next gen. Oh my gosh. We can never exclude young people from any conversation that we have, because we rely on them to keep the dream alive and to ensure that no one ever forgets the heritage and the importance of all the contributions that have been made. So I'd like to turn to Dorcas, who claims that I tortured her with walking on you. I deny it.
Is it 7 million steps?
Yeah, go ahead.
I am Dorcas Adekunle. I'm originally from Nigeria. My family settled in New Jersey. I attended law school at Drexel University. I work on Capitol Hill as Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director to Congresswoman Susan Wild. But I will back up for a second, because actually my very first time on Capitol Hill was ABA Lobby Day with yours truly here. We were in the New Jersey delegation, going from office to office. And so who knew that is where I would be today. Prior to working for Congresswoman Susan Wild, I was with Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, New Jersey's 12th Congressional District. She created the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls that I spearheaded in her office. And the intention of that caucus is really to center the voices of Black women and girls. We felt that Black women were usually at the end, right, of some of the thought processes when we were putting policies together, but we need some of these services the most. And so we decided to look at a framework of what would it look like, what would it be like if we were to start with Black women on healthcare, for example, and then work from that out. Education, financial services, et cetera. And so I was proud to do a lot of that work. Congresswoman Susan Wild is one of the Fab Four. I don't know if you've heard of that. Pennsylvania had no women in its delegation, and now they have 4. So I'm fortunate to work for one of them. And so part of my theme in being on this panel today is really talking about the people that empower women. Folks like Ms. Paulette Brown that have empowered me, right? I was totally new to that environment, stunned, didn't know what to do, but she instilled confidence in me as we went from office to office, talked about these issues. She probably doesn't know she did that for me, but she did. Part of the reason that I even attended law school and became a lawyer is because a former manager of mine, an attorney, sat me down and really encouraged me to go. Mr. Green, he said, you have all of the skills to become an attorney, and no matter how well you do here as my legal secretary, I can't promote you to lawyer, so you should go. And that was a seed. And so that is why I'm here. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Great, thank you. So as we think about women fulfilling the dream, and there's so many women who have done that over time, and and obviously the women on this panel are in the process of fulfilled some of them, but still in the process of fulfilling dreams. So if I can just start with Charmaine, you talked about how you did not realize the types of bias that existed until you went to work in the workforce. And sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes we don't always recognize it, and sometimes only we recognize it and not the people around us. And so now, I didn't know that there was a word for it before, but now I've been reading a lot about white-splaining, and how somebody tries to explain your feelings and tell you how you should feel and how you should not feel about certain things. So, when you first started going into the workforce, there must have been some micro messaging that was, given to you that others couldn't see, but you knew that you were receiving it. So tell us how you were able to, some of the tools you used to navigate that, to make sure that you would fulfill your dream.
Very good question, because you're right, some of it was hidden. I wasn't aware that I was being maybe not considered excluded or marginalized for my talent, because there was no conversation, one. Also, I was probably a minority, so there were not many of us that we could compare, and certainly early in my career, it was taboo to talk about compensation. It was taboo to share that information with other colleagues. But over time, when you talk about people who have encouraged you, I had mentors. I had mentors who began to share with me what I was eligible for, what I deserved, what I was entitled to, helped me to also navigate the organization. We always hear about the unwritten rules. It's not just about showing up, for work every day. It's not just about getting your work done. They're the unwritten rules that people had exposed to me. For example, making sure it wasn't just enough, and I tend to be in the world of insurance and risk management. Often we are what we call the color blue, so we're very detailed oriented and may not be yellow and outgoing. That is one of the things I had to overcome. It wasn't just coming into my office, just putting my head down and getting the work done. I had to begin to learn how to make those connections, how to, I share with young people today, exploit the organization. And what I mean by that is make sure that your presence is known, make sure that the work that you do is recognized by others, that just beyond those people who you immediately report to, for example. But I have to give credit to those mentors. For example, the National African American Insurance Association. That was the first time where I met someone outside of the firm, and one of my colleagues pulled me outside from a different office, and she said, "Where's your title?" And I said, "What do you mean? What title?" She said, "You are leading a national organization outside of this firm. I'm sure you're talented. Where's your title?" I didn't know that I was eligible for consideration of a title, as an example.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned something that I'm totally unfamiliar with, blue and yellow. Could you talk, just before I go to the next person, because I don't want to forget that you just sort of glossed over this blue and yellow thing.
So we just recently had, this is why it's sticking with me, we recently had our Insights, and Insights is similar to a Myers-Briggs, and the purpose is to help you identify your communication style, your work behavior, so that you can interact better with your fellow colleagues who might be different colors.
Good. Blue and yellow. Okay. All right. So Richie, I was watching, how do you get to become a culinary expert for Williams-Sonoma? One of my favorite stores in you must be the whatever the right color is to communicate with people.
It's funny because every time I do something like this, I always forget one of my jobs. It's so funny when people ask, what do I do? But that is one of the things that I do. I'm a culinary expert for Williams-Sonoma. It's a brand that I absolutely love. And one of the things I'm really big on, which I definitely encourage, especially women to do, is vision boards. So last year, or the year before last, because I started working with them last year, I put Williams-Sonoma on my vision board just because I thought, it's a brand I want to work with. I do this as a social media influencer. I work with brands. So I thought Williams-Sonoma would be a great brand to work with. Great things, great discounts, so I can use the stuff on my show. But it's like walking into a candy store. Like for me, that were a child, it would be like that. But really, I just put it on my vision board. And the thing I love about vision boards is that you really don't have to know the how. You just have to be comfortable with putting out there the what. So planting the seed. So literally, there's a small little part of my vision board where I put Williams-Sonoma logo. And then one day I just walked in and I was like, hey, I have a show. I love to cook. I teach classes. I taught cooking classes before, but I mean, I hadn't had the type of experience one would really need to go in.
So you did what a lot of men do.
I just went in and I said, I want this job.
Exactly. And it didn't matter whether you only had 20% of what was required.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's been a great experience, and I was able to really create a unique space for myself there. I'm also a digital ambassador for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and Williams-Sonoma, as a large brand, Williams-Sonoma Incorporated, it includes Pottery Barn and Pottery Barn Kids and West Elm. They're great supporters of St. Jude, and so I came up with this idea last year to do a holiday soiree at Williams-Sonoma for St. Jude. And it's the first time it had ever been done in the entire company, and I got to do it. And we're now working to replicate that across the country. So, and that all started with that seed I planted on my vision board.
Yes. Okay, so, yeah. So I'm sure it takes something a little more than putting this logo on a vision board, because a lot of us have vision boards, right? Yeah. How many of you, put that little thing on your vision board and then it magically came true? Okay, so we're going to have to get back to Richie, because we're going to have to dig a little deeper into that so that we can make our vision boards come alive.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Dorcas, you talked about the importance of mentors and people. So how does one find a good mentor, and how do you know that the person will be a good mentor, and what does it take to be a good mentee so that you can maximize the skill set that you need to fulfill the dreams that you want? And probably your dreams might be evolving, perhaps. Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, finding a good mentor meant seeking them out. And so that required me to be involved in organizations where there would be a concentration of people that were doing things that I found interesting. From there, I listened to people, went to lots of events, tried to get to know people, listened to people's stories, to try to see where their stories may be similar to mine and how they got to where they were going and what I could benefit from their experiences. In terms of being a good mentee, it's really important to follow up and to be responsive. There are lots of times where mentors might do the work of connecting folks, and then there's no follow-up after that. And so that can be disappointing to the person that's putting themselves out there. But I found that there are lots of people that are really interested in pouring into the next generation. And so I've really benefited from that.
So it also seems like you gravitate towards women who are making history. So Bonnie Watson Coleman was the first African-American female congressperson from New Jersey. Yeah. You just sort of worked your way into her staff, because you were a law student, recent grad, all those sorts of things, and now you're working for one of the Fab Four. More history. So how are you able to navigate to put yourself in that kind of position? You got a vision board?
I'm gonna get one now. No, Bonnie Watson Coleman's meeting was complete chance happening. Her husband was the interim pastor of my parents' church in New Jersey, so she and I met in the ladies' room at church. Completely chance happening. And I talked to her. I really liked her. And then I went to do more research on her, and I loved her at that point. So I sent her a Facebook friend request with a message letting her know that it was great to meet her. I had done some research on her work. She was in the state legislature at the time. And I said, if you need an intern, this summer. I'm free. And she took
Free
me.
and more words.
And she took me up on that. And so she connected me with her chief of staff, and that's how I started my journey with her. It actually started while I was in law school. And shortly after I graduated, she decided to run for Congress. Congresswoman Susan Wild, my resume just happened to be passed to her office, actually.
More magic. It's a lot of magic.
Yeah. So her office reached out to me to interview, and we talked probably for about 15, 20 minutes, but there was like an instant connection. And so she followed up with an offer, and I'm thrilled.
But so these ladies are really trying to convince you that all of this is really easy, and we know that it's not, because if that was so, then I know that I'd be much further along. I'd be rich probably by now or something. But it's like when preparation meets opportunity. And so that all of them are showing that you have to be prepared in order to be able to fulfill your dream, right? So Charmaine, don't tell me it was magic how you got to be a senior vice president, that you put it on your vision board or that you dreamt it one night, or you had a Ouija board or something like that and you moved around. So tell me, what did you have to do to prepare to get to where you are now?
Certainly, thank you. And I'm a lot older than a vision board. They're new now, and it's in our conversation. But in answer to your question, I did have to do a lot of preparation. What I still use is my list, my goals. Every year in January, I update my goals and objectives, and I take what I want to achieve and I put them in bite size. They're like sort of the ingredients to the cake, and I'm able to. I encourage myself to scratch them off. For example, before I became senior vice president, that was on my list for 3 years. Prior to that, it was vice president. Before that, it was an AVP. And I just kept knocking it off. And now I'm working on additional initiatives at this end. But I make sure I'm prepared for those roles when the opportunities arrive. And I also, again, take the advice of my mentors, as that would be, sort of an undervaluation if I did not do that. But certainly I commit to what I set out to achieve. I'm constantly educating myself. Over the last couple of years, I became an adjunct professor for my own benefit, but also for the benefit of, again, inspiring young minds to enter into the industry. So these are all things that I'm preparing for the bigger opportunities. But it's been a long time in coming. If I benchmark myself compared to my peer group, it certainly has been a longer, slower, harder road.
Right. Mm-hmm. But you don't give up.
I don't give up.
You don't give up. Never say never, never say no, right?
Correct. And I feel like I can't give up, again, because this journey is not just about me. It's the platform for the people who are coming behind me as well.
Excellent, very important. So, but and ladies, you don't have to wait until I call on you. If something moves you, you can jump right in. And also to our audience, if you have a question, because I may not ask the question that you want to hear the answer to. So, so I'm sure these are really extremely talented women, and they can probably handle any kind of question just about that you can ask. Just don't, I'm not on the panel, so I don't get to be asked questions. But Richie, I'm gonna go back to you because we're only getting like little bits and pieces of the many things that she does. So. Are you all familiar with Girl Trek? Yeah, that's another thing.
You will be today. I said you will be today.
Yes, exactly. So I am familiar with Girl Trek.
Oh, good.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Girl Trek. Yeah. So because one of my best friends started a track club about 20, 30 years or so ago, and so in our book club, she gets us to participate in Girl Trek things.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Girl Trek is a national nonprofit that is really focused on helping Black women in particular take control of their own health in ways that are, and for many people, very, very new. And so the process is very simplified by starting with walking. And through walking, Girl Trek promotes empowerment. There are a lot of historical ties to it. So a lot of the women you see around the room are women who, the women who are in Girl Trek walk for. And I was very, very privileged to be a part of Girl Trek. For a few years, I was the board chair, and they're doing phenomenal things now. I still support them. I just don't have time to be on the board, but it's a really great organization, and the founders are just phenomenal women as well.
Right. So thanks. So you don't have time to be as active anymore because you're busy thinking of new businesses to start and open. Yes.
Yeah. I look at myself as a creator. I mean, it was hard for me when you asked Teresa my title to put on the tables, and because it's I look at myself as a creator, whether it's I'm creating a new recipe, or whether it's designing a new baby bib, or coming up with a new idea for my show, or what have you. I create. That's what I do.
Good. So, what I want to find out from each of you, and anybody can jump in at any time, is, what is there any particular thing or things that have been your inspiration to do the best that you can do? Is there something that happened in your life, or some particular person who may have influenced you to want to be able to just not fulfill your dream, but as Charmaine talked about, to ensure that there are other people behind you who can fulfill their dreams as well? Anybody?
I'll start.
Okay. Okay.
So I have two people. The first one is my grandfather, and I came home to visit him my third year of law school. He was very sick, and I told him I was graduating from law school to try to get him to hold on. I was the first in our family. And he said, when you graduate, you should just come back home, sit on your parents' back porch, and then figure out what you want to do. For 6 months, do that. And I just, that thought never even occurred to me. I was in New York. Home is here. I was not coming back here. I mean, I never thought about that. But then he passed away 2 weeks later, and it really did change how I looked at my life and what I wanted to do with my life. So I took the bar in New York, and then I came home and I took a break. I mean, up until then, I'd been just going nonstop. I was always an overachiever. I always did what people expected me to do, and to be what they expected me to be. And the first time I took a break, and to me that was just so liberating. And so everything I do now goes back to that moment when I had that conversation with him, giving me the freedom to really figure out what I wanted to do and what kind of impact I wanted to make on the world. And the second person is my daughter, Riley, who on social media is known as Mini Boss, because she is my boss. But 6 years ago, she really changed how I looked at my life and what I wanted my work life to be about and what I wanted my family life to be about. And I mean, people would say to me before I had her, when you have a child, it changes everything and make you a better person. And Riley has made me such an awesome person. Like, I did not know how awesome I could be until I had my daughter. So those are the two people I would say really have impacted my life, my career.
I would say mine's is probably the obvious. It would be my mother. She's my biggest champion. Anything I put before her, she thinks I can do everything, including be president and rule the world. But she definitely inspires me, just because of the life that she lived, the sacrifices that she had to give birth and support me to be who I can be without any limitation. Just endless love. And I would just say a personal experience. I think before I would say take life experience seriously, I was working as a consultant in my early years. And I was given a task to go to, I think it was Louisville, Kentucky. And I had to conduct a feasibility study requiring some interviews of some key people in that area and report back to the president of the firm. And not understanding the component of the work that I was assigned to, I had reached back out to the president and said, hey, did you have the meeting? And he said, no, I was waiting for your report. And it was obvious at that time that, wait a minute, what I do is important. So I take every task that I'm responsible for seriously. everything that I do with intense, with the level of intensity, for optimum outcomes for myself and those who might benefit from that.
I would put my inspiration in two categories. The first would be my family. I come from a family that is really affirming to women, particularly the men in our family. And so that includes my father, it includes my uncles, it includes my grandfather when he was alive. They always instilled in me that whatever it is, I should probably dream bigger and just go for it and see what happens. Of course, my mother and my siblings, I'm the oldest of four, and so that makes me want to do well so that they have somebody to look up to.
You need to set an example.
Right.
Yes.
That's
a
important
good example,
to me.
I should say.
The other category would be people that saw more in me than I did in myself. And I was fortunate that started for me back when I was young, even as an immigrant, coming to a completely different country, having to learn the language, the culture, the fashion, all of that, trying
you got
to.
The fashion down.
Well, thank you. Trying to fit in, and so throughout my life, I've had teachers that said, you can do this, whether it was speech and theater when I was in middle school and high school, or employers. I've really had people that say, you mentioned sometimes dreams are evolving, and I've had people that have been through different experiences that say, you've got this great voice, or you've got these great ideas, or this is how you do this. Let me show you, and let me write down a plan with you. And they really walk me through how to succeed, and I'm totally grateful for that.
So, in thinking about the vision board, I just thought of myself. And so I'm putting Gucci on my vision board, and I want all of you all to think about it and go on Twitter to Dapper Dan and put @Brown for Lawyers, Gucci, Paulette Brown. That after the blackface incident, they're looking for a global diversity.
That's right.
It should be me. Everybody, I'm putting it in the universe. So, but any event, so I just got the 5-minute warning. So, we've heard of a lot of different wonderful things that you have shared, and I've put down 3 key things that I've come away with. But if you had 30 seconds to give advice, not just to the women, but to the men as well, especially in terms of how women can empower themselves and how men can help to empower women, what would you say?
I would say always remember your value. That's not something that, like I said, I'm an immigrant, right? It's not something that had always been at the forefront of my mind. Sometimes when I walked into a new environment, I would think, well, how do I navigate this? How do I do this? And what I came to realize is that, other people might have this, but I do bring this, right? And so remembering who you are and what your value is, I think makes a big difference.
Thank you.
And just to add on to that, I would say certainly retain who you are, but for those of us in the room, what we can do to make sure that we have a diverse environment, it takes a little bit more work, maybe not picking the obvious person, but picking somebody different, bringing someone else to the table to that dance. As our previous speaker just mentioned, it's important for us to be diverse for the sustainability of our society. And if we're not thinking about our future and we're continuing to do as we are, we're gonna lose our presence and our leadership in this global society.
I think I would say don't be afraid to be afraid. Everything that I've done that's been pretty cool by other people's standards, my own too, I've been deathly afraid to do. And I think that you have to accept that if you are going to do the things you want to set out to do. And there are a lot more steps than just putting the logo on the vision.
Yeah. We know
that. A lot of work. But just not being afraid. And in my career, everything that I've ever done has been extremely challenging for me. I never walked into a career actually having the background to do it. But I did it anyway, and I did pretty well. And so that's what I want to share with you. Don't be afraid to be afraid.
So, choices that make you feel good. Don't wait for someone to fix things for you, and mentorship. And for me, don't be afraid, as you said, to walk towards what may be uncomfortable for you, because what's on the other side could truly be your reward. I'd like to thank my phenomenal panelists for sharing with us this afternoon, and to have us know what it is to fulfill your dream and to continue to fulfill your dream. I'd like to thank the audience for your attention, and you're all out there in Chicagoland. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and
splinters and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare.
But all the time, I's been a climbing on, and reaching landings and turning corners.
And sometimes going in the dark, where there ain't been no light.
So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on those steps.
Cause you find it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I still going, honey. I still climbing.
And life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
I want to thank Paulette Brown because she's our wonderful moderator, and she traveled from New Jersey, and she's a native of Baltimore, and we're just glad to have her here, and we know how busy she is, and now she's created a new job that she's put out in the universe, so we hope to hear about that job. And then, of course, Charmaine and I have a history with the National Council of Negro Women, and Dorcas, of course, is being mentored by Paulette, so of course you're like her daughter. So where you go, she goes. Where she goes, you go. And of course, Riche and I have our previous connection with an old boss that we worked for years ago. And so we were connected through that small combination. So I'm glad to see all of you here today. And I just wanted to take a moment. My co-chair, Evan M. Greenberger, is not here today. His dad is ill, so we just want to keep him in our thoughts and in our prayers. This was a wonderful program, but it wasn't done by one person. It's a whole team of people in the background who worked very hard to do this. And so I know Jack acknowledged them, but we have other people too. Our fellas, Mitch Higgins and Lamont Glasper and artist Duva and a host of others, Travis Sumner, Roberto Vasquez. There's just so many people. I don't want to forget anybody because they really have helped us put on the technical piece, and we couldn't do it without them. I hope people are tuning in as we did live stream this. We wanted to do something different, and we had to cancel the program because of, as Jack said, inclement weather. So we were hoping when we heard the weather this weekend that this did not happen again, because we're just going to totally cancel it after that. We're like, we'll just see you next year. That's all, we'll just see you next year. And so I wanted to also ask, if you are a guest from outside the ABA and you joined us today, please stand. If you came, if you were invited by others, please stand. Please stand. Thank you. We appreciate having you, and we want to thank you so much for coming. We just wanted to let you know we have some other things coming up with our Diversity Council. We have a great group of council members, and I'm the oldest on the council, which is really a shame, but I realize that they're all millennials except for me. And it's okay, because I'm learning a lot from them, but I know, but they have great ideas, and they're full of energy, and they know how much I really care about them. So millennials, raise your hand in the back, because they're proud of it. They're very proud. Raise your hand. They're very proud of it. They brag about being young. It's only for a short time. It's only for a short time. So we have a non-binary training coming up. We're going to be doing something with the Code Talkers. We're going to be looking at career empowerment. So we have a few things that will be coming up that we're going to try some new things on the coming year in our DC office, and we're looking forward to that. And you may hear from us again, ladies. And so just last question, any other questions? Anybody? Nothing? Okay. So with that said, we have special presentations for you. Behind you are 4 gold bags. Right behind you, I'm going to let you, yes, thank you, Dana. And that's on behalf of our many entities here in DC, the Section of International Law, Criminal Justice, of course, and a few other donors that provided gifts, so we want to thank you for that as well. No, there's no money in there. There's not a car, Richie. You just said you want Williams and Sonoma. It's not a gift card from Williams and Sonoma. No.
Gucci bag?
Right, Gucci bag, not a Gucci bag. Oh no, not a Gucci bag. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over, and immediately following my comments, I just want to thank again Jack Rives, our executive director, who sort of lets us have our way with this program. We want to thank you, Jack, and allowing you to hang out with a lot of women today. I know, you're outnumbered. But also the ABA is a great place. We have great people here. And so I just want to thank all my colleagues who came out to support us today, and we appreciate that. So we're going to move into our final musical selection. And also, how did you like Stephanie Mathias? She's our violinist. Yes, we wanted to keep this a whole female kind of thing. So yeah, we from the very beginning. So Stephanie's going to close us out with You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman by Aretha Franklin. And then we'll have a reception. You may help yourselves. After that, take pictures with the panel. They're going to hang around. We want to thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And happy Black History Month. And if you notice, we have posters all around and outside. And every day at the ABA, we have placed a poster on the intranet as well as in our hallway to honor Black history. So we want to thank Mitch Higgins again for all your help with that as well. Thank you, and have a great one.
you.